G'day and welcome again to a Campfire Project panel discussion. Today, first of all, we have with us Cady, who is a pain transformation coach and creator of the Neural Alignment Method. How are you, Dawn?
I'm good, my love. How are you?
Really good.
Hi,
And then we have Jonathan Hart, who's one of our newest members, an award-winning journalist who turned influencer, educator, entrepreneur, and thought leader. How are you, Jonathan?
Very well, Alan. How are you today?
Really good, thanks. And then we have Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz, the man whisperer. How are you, Kenny?
Pretty good, thank you. Bright and early morning here.
Excellent. And that's over in England. So it's nice and early for you. I can see the sun coming in behind you. Over here,
yeah,
it's going down for us, or pretty much gone. But we've been talking a lot on the Campfire Project about a lot of isolation, and we talked about other people. But we thought about today talking about what social isolation has actually brought up for us, the panelists, and to have a bit of talk about that. And then if we look at how we're dealing with it and what things that we're putting in place. So I was wondering, Kenny, would you like to start us off on this one?
Yeah, I think for me it's been in stages, and the first stage was very, very familiar from my family of originally from Goa. So I was brought up old-fashioned Portuguese in Uganda. And cut a long story short, we ended up on the Secret Service death list. So we were followed, our phones were tapped, we were dangerous to know or be around. So we isolated. And the isolation was something that I guess we did without thinking, and we hoped that all of us would blow over because it's our home. I was born there, my parents were born in East Africa. And it was familiar because it's like, oh, we've done this before. And then in my mind, the next thing that will happen is probably that there will be a curfew because that's what we had. And then the next thing that will happen is probably the military will be out with their guns and things because that's what we had. So it was almost familiar. And I thought, well, with this going on, I need to get my act together because this is familiar and I've done it and it's not really freaking me out. So I need to create places. So I started daily kind of check-ins, mini men's groups. I need to create places for people to talk about how they are with this going on, because I was clear that I was triggered by things. I wasn't totally here. I was clearly triggered. And I spoke to my mother about 2 days in, and she was a bit upset. She was a bit upset because she was worrying about my brother. And then I told her what was triggered in me. And for her, it was like, oh my God, I'm not sure I was actually worrying about your brother. I think maybe I was triggered by the whole thing. And I made a story up to justify my insecure emotions. And, you know, what a mother to be that switched on and to get it. But I just thought, this is really important. This is really important for people to know what's going on and to be able to talk about it. And then for people to know what's triggered, because with isolation, there's all sorts of weird behavior that could come up, from alcoholism, either harming self or others. And I know what it's like when the red mist falls on me and when it's fallen on my father or other people around me. It's almost like it's not that person anymore. Something's happened. And to kind of like nip it in the bud before that happens. So it was really important for me to pass something on. But I've had layer upon layer of memories and triggers and things like that. And the most recent one was very, very strange. So I've kept myself busy, but I really missed my best friend who lives in California. So I phoned him up late one night, and I noticed that I was scared of him and I was angry at him, and I didn't let myself engage with him too much. I was on Facebook at the same time, and it's like, that's weird because I really need, I don't know, to be who we are. But there's something up, and it was disturbing. And then the next day I phoned him, and we had a very short conversation, but it was us again. It's like I let him in. I wasn't angry or scared or whatever it was. And then I followed that feeling back, and I realized that I'd never really felt or grieved when we went into hiding. and when I lost all my school friends and I never saw them again. And I had a habit that I couldn't say goodbye to anyone ever. I would pretend that I'd see them again, and I'd say, I'll see you when so-and-so, and that was triggered. So it's these kind of things that I've had memories. I've been really pleased to have the triggers, and so far I haven't gone bananas. I've kind of kept sane, and I wonder whether I will tip over the edge at some stage. But it's really interesting to see how I've been and what's been triggered.
It's
Powerful, isn't it? That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, you know, coming from England and coming from a middle class family, you don't think that ever anybody's gone through that. It doesn't even enter your head. And the fact that you've related what we're all going through globally to something that happened to you when you were younger and how it triggered you, and how your mum, I mean, that was incredible when you said that your mum just processed straight away when you said what was going on for you. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, Kenny, that was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I think, you know, on a global level, we're all going through something together, but we're all going through it completely differently. And, and, you know, we are the sum of all our experiences. So we're all going, the things that come up, we're going to be triggered from previous events in our lives, things that have happened. And the way in which we handle it's going to do it as well. So in my case, I've probably been busier than I've ever been before the pandemic. And so I haven't really allowed myself to stop and think. I'm living on my own, and I've just been working on what I'm doing, the Campfire Project. We've had a lot of one-on-ones. We've had a lot of panel discussions. We've had the Modern Masculine Summit. I'm on a business one coming up in the next couple of weeks. I've got clients running profiles, so I've been flat out doing things, and I haven't really stopped to think about it. So I'm thinking, with me, I'm wondering, well, what am I going to be like when it's over? And everyone starts to, you know, I know about 60% of people who said they want to continue working from home, but a lot of them won't get that opportunity. Their bosses will want them back in the fold in the organisation so they can see them and micromanage them again. And so with that being the case, well, I'm not going to have the connection that I've got at this level online. It'll still be there, but not as much. So what am I going to be like then? So that's the one I'm curious about as well. How about you, Jonathan?
Well, it's been an interesting time for me, Alan, because look, we're fortunate here in SA because there's been very few deaths here, and I think we're now on our 9th day where nobody has been diagnosed with suffering coronavirus. So that's not even a death. That's not even a diagnosis of a new case. I hear Kenny talking about things very, very much different there in Britain, where the death rate does seem to just be going up. But I'm a little bit, I come from this viewing it very, very, a bit cynically, even, because I've had a few things that have happened to me, and it's all about, I see it as part of all of this is a bit of social control. So as well as it being an absolute tragedy that people are suffering, it could very well be actually used not necessarily just by government, but by other people to create a divide and conquer mentality. So I'll give you an example of what happened to me going back about a month ago. I was at a shopping centre and I was lining up to go in, and I got to the woman there who was handing out hand sanitizer, and I asked her a question. I just said, "Well, that's cool. I'll put this on. I don't really see why it's." No, I didn't say this, but I was thinking this. I was thinking I don't see really why I need to wear hand sanitizer. I'm just, walking around the shops, but that's fine. But all I asked her was, "Okay, thank you for that. Are you wearing any hand sanitizer?" And with that, she got very frustrated. It was a very simple question. I asked her quite nicely. She got very frustrated. She wanted to see my ID, like my own driver's license. And then when I refused to show her that, I asked her if she was a policewoman, and obviously it was not a serious question because she wasn't. She then got security. So at this point, I just asked her, look, can I go in? This is getting ridiculous. All I want to do is get some fruit drink. And she said, no, you can't come in. You haven't shown me your ID. So I turned around and walked out. And it was from that moment on that I thought, well, I can't really go and hug people here. A lot of the things that I got taken for granted, which was was about connection with people, and which is essential to central nervous system. We are we need people. We need to see people. We need to be close to people. If we're being disconnected from those elements that are essential to us, then that can be used as in a way against us if you want to look at it in terms of government wanting to control elements of society.
So there's the fear of controls and everything else. I know you mentioned the number of deaths. Does anyone know the latest figure here in Australia? It's still under 100, isn't it?
Yeah, it's under 100. Yeah.
Yeah, and 14 of them are at the bottom of the hill of where I live in Penrith.
Wow.
So there's a lot in a nursing home down at the bottom of where I live.
So
I have a pain clinic in Penrith. So I'm not going to open the pain clinic until all this is blown over, obviously, because there's groups, it's groups of people going through the pain. So I don't know when it'll be for us in this area, because we've had the biggest case in one area, I believe, because it's in a nursing home, and there's 14 deaths, I think the last one was.
Wow.
Update.
The idea then for you is not to go down the hill, stay up the top of the hill.
I never venture down the hill unless I'm going to one of my pain clinics. I've not ventured down there. I prefer it in the mountains.
In Australia, the reason I asked about the number of deaths, I know that in Australia there's been that they expect about 1,500 deaths from suicides. And we know that calls to Beyond Blue have gone up by Beyond Blue. By the way, if you don't know, Kenny is one of our helplines. Its call rate's gone up by 40%.
Wow.
Over this period. So we're talking about the virus itself, but it's not the real killer.
No, it's a fallout from this. It's the mum and dad businesses. It's the men who are impacted the most from this.
Yeah. Absolutely. That way.
Absolutely. You're stripping them of their identity and their ability if they're not allowed to work, especially in trades. So tradies, and you're not allowing them to go out there and do their work. I mean, if they're in an office, they've got the option of being able to do their work from home. When they're tradies, they can't work from home. You've taken their purpose away from them. A lot of these are creators. They like to build things with their hands.
That's it. And with all that time on their own, I think, how many people are spending more time in their own heads?
That's exactly what I was going to say. And I'd say it's a very male thing to want to fix things. If there's fear, if there's emotion, if there's anxiety, it's straight into the head. How do I fix this? And sadly, disturbingly, so many men who I've worked with trying to think their way through everything and get lost in that mush that's never actually fixed anything. It's just pretending to be in control. And I know I've been there when I was suicidal in the past, and it was purely a logical thing, which was, well, I can't control things, I can't fix things, therefore the only thing I haven't tried, or the only logical option, is to remove myself from the situation. And that is just absolute bonkers. And things pass. And when I was in that situation, the feeling is, I've always been here, I will always be here, and there is nothing else. Who am I kidding? So I may as well just stop the pain. And this is just logical. What about everything else? And I believe it begins with a broken spirit. And there's another man I worked with recently. What was triggered for him is he would be humiliated by his family. It was almost as if he was the emotional punch bag. And when he totally lost it, whether he was angry or crying, he'd be locked in the laundry room. And a lot of people feel punished or locked or grounded or isolated, and then that stuff's triggered and they don't know how to deal with it because they are no longer here. They're no longer present and connected. That trauma has been triggered and that's never really been dealt with. So it is the mental health issues, the suicide, even the depression. You were talking about hugging, even the depression from not being touched, because physical touch is so important. And I think now people might have a better idea of what the elderly go through without being touched. Single people who are living alone, who are not just emotionally isolated, but there's something else in the background about being touched going on.
Yeah.
How's it been for you, Dawn, up on top of your hill?
So, interestingly, I've grown immensely from the experience. Stuff has come up for me personally, but because I've done a lot of work, I have been suicidal in the past myself, and I actually had depression through isolation. So when I was 5.5 months pregnant, I slipped and I was left disabled and I wasn't able to leave the house. Then I had my young boy and they told me I'd get better and I didn't, I got worse. So I was isolated at home, addicted to painkillers with a newborn going, what the, and you can fill in what that blank is. And it just got to the point for me where I was like, I can't do this anymore. The medical world just pretty much wrote me off and said, really sorry, nothing can be done. The operation's failed. So I'll tell you what, go see a clinical psychologist and this is your life. You're just going to have to deal with it. So I ended up being diagnosed with depression through isolation because of this. No one came to see me. No one knew what the hell to say to me because this had been going on for a long time. So I was like, my son was 16 months old before I got to the point of having a nervous breakdown. And no one knew what to say, so there were no phone calls. All my family are in the UK. My husband's family weren't aware of what was going on. I'd lost all my friends. So I was like, I'm in this on my own. And not only am I in this on my own, but I am being the absolute worst human being on the face of this earth because I'm in so much pain. I resent every minute that I'm alive. And I'm having to look after a child. Are you kidding me right now? Why have you put me in this situation? So I'm going into the darkness of what it feels like when you're there. And like you say, Kenny, the logical thing for me was my husband is having to pick up the slack. My child is being scarred for life. This is what was going on in my head by a mother who is completely incapable of looking after a son. It wasn't that bad, but you play these stories around.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I have to just end it. It's just going to be peace for everybody. I am creating so much havoc in this world. I might as well just end it. And when I was laid in bed thinking about how I could end it, it was like, if I am in isolation in regards to I can't leave the house because I couldn't take my son out because I couldn't lift him. I couldn't get him into the car. We live in the Blue Mountains. I'm on a hill. I couldn't push him up the hill in a pram. And I said to myself, he's going to find me. How the hell am I going to end my life? He's going to find me. That's what pulled me out at the thought that that's going to scar him finding his mum dead than me shouting and screaming at him. That's how bad it had to get that I was able, and fortunately for me, there was a solution there, that there was two choices. Which is worse? And depression does funny things to you. It almost removes that any option is available to you. So I am very fortunate that I had that run through my head. But most people aren't that fortunate. And most people don't get access to that. And they're left in this on their own. Now, I've done a lot of work on myself, so I wasn't triggered by that experience. But can you imagine if I hadn't have done work on myself, if I hadn't have removed all those emotions and gone through that experience, what would I be experiencing right now? We don't know who has experienced isolation like we have. We have no idea who is reaching out and asking these people, are you okay? Because we know that you've been to see a psychologist and this has happened to you. You've been diagnosed with depression through isolation. This must be really bad for you. Who's reaching out to these people?
I feel listening to you and the depth of what to me feels like a horrific experience. And I don't know anything about your history, but you've clearly done some work on yourself. I wonder whether because of the so-called nasties we've been through in our lives, we are able to meet people in some very dark places. And I know that there are a lot of people, as you said, who've run away because they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. And you know, it's very strange. This is racist, but there was a term. An Englishman's dream is to go from birth to death without embarrassment. I've also heard it which is the sexist version, which is a man's dream is to go from birth to death without embarrassment. And maybe people were just too embarrassed to be anywhere near you because they didn't know what to do or how to be, or they couldn't meet themselves in this place. Exactly. So how could they possibly be with you there? And I would say there are three types of people in situations like this. Those that run away from, because it's like, this doesn't exist, I can't cope, I need to self-preserve. It's too embarrassing, it's too ugly, you know, la, la, la. Those that run towards and they want to fix it or talk about it or project things on it and whatever it is, because it's like, I'll fix it so I don't need to be there with you, then I'm no longer in pain because I'm doing something. And the ones that I feel are being called upon at the moment, as well as the other two, because they're not wrong, they just are, is the ones that can be there with someone and not even necessarily process it, not even necessarily talk about it. But if I can meet myself in my pain and terror, then I can be with you in your pain and terror. And I find that's the place where people transform. And a lot of men have tried therapy and talked about it, and it's worked for so many. A lot have done a lot of more physical things, and it's worked for so many people. I feel the shift comes when they are met in that place, and it's beyond words. It's not even about meeting and the feeling and processing, it's just being met in that place. And I think I've got a stubborn boy somewhere in me that has said, I'm not shifting or letting my life move forward until I have been met here. And whether that's true or not, I really don't care. But I know I've got that part, and I've got some very funny parts inside of me. But if that's where people need to be met, to be seen, to be validated, some of the people I've worked with recently, they've only been able to do their work and turn it around because of the social isolation, because the distractions have been taken away and things have been triggered, and they're now willing to go there, or it's just up and they have to deal with it. Where if it wasn't for this golden gift of knowing our shadows and transforming our shadows, then they'd be still surviving in limbo.
That's right. We've all asked for this in some way. With my clients that I see online, every single one of them, we've been able to find the gold in the situation and how some way they actually asked for this experience. I'm too busy, I can't do that. I've got too many places to go. I've got too many meetings to go to. I've got too much to do. And they've asked to have this time of where there's nowhere to go, no one to impress. It's time to be with yourself. And when you can help someone meet that point where at some point they have asked for this isolation in their own way, once you're able to help them see that, then they can hold on to that golden nugget and go, you know what? When I'm feeling that I'm spinning here, I can just go do what I actually asked I wanted this time for. I wanted to do some personal development. I wanted to read that book. I wanted to watch this series. So, do you see? It's we've all asked for it at some point in our life, and if you can find where you've asked for this isolation, that's what helps and brings you out. So you're not a victim of it. You're actually using it to your benefit.
Yeah.
Which brings out the strength in your character, because then you're like, you know what? I am more powerful than this isolation. Yeah.
How about you, Jonathan?
I was going to say that one of the powerful things that I've been able to bring into my conversations with friends, and I've got about 4 friends that are really doing it difficult at the moment, and part of it is either breakups or the social isolation as well, having to work from home or whatever it might be. But if there can't be that that hug or that pat on the back or whatever, or just to sit down or go for a walk or have a coffee somewhere in public, there's always humor. And so I think that there's an opportunity to share, the good times and the laughs that are out there on the internet or just in a normal conversation. And that really brings people together and it just helps us all get over or work through the things that are making the life difficult as well. I mean, like you said, Dawn, there is silver linings to every cloud, and there's so much to be thankful for. Like, we can smell the roses a bit more often now. Being brought back down to an easier pace, working from home, there is so much to be grateful for. But then if that's all there is and we're isolated in other ways, that can get frustrating too. So just I suppose my message is, have a laugh if you can.
Yeah.
Well, humor's always been a good medicine to break the cycle. One of the things we've been finding on the Campfire projects, we have a good laugh beforehand. We talk about serious things, and quite often when we wrap it up and we've finished the session, we're still, we're back into the joking and laughing. We brought the humour into some of the stuff as well. You can be serious, but the whole thing is, if you're serious all the time, you can become quite morose. So having a bit of humour breaks that intensity, or the intensity of it. When you break the intensity of it, because if you're caught now in our heads all the time and we're so focused on stuff, we're missing a lot of the stuff that's out there because we're so focused on there. And as you were saying, Kenny, it's all that mush that we can't really make any sense of. Well, break it with a bit of humour, and all of a sudden we start to see bits of knowledge or understanding coming through those little cracks in it, because we've had a bit more light brought in through the laughter.
The word that you use that I think is really important is medicine. And I know that when someone else is talking about something that's uncomfortable for me, or I'm talking about something, or even thinking about something uncomfortable, I hold my breath. And I don't know about in Australia. When I lived over there, people were a lot more open and a lot more friendly and a lot more sharing than Southern English middle class. Not that it's just different cultures. Over here, the only other time that people hold their breath is when they touch each other to do selfies to put on social media, because it's like no one, it's not like that. But when the camera's out, there's no breathing. When people talk, whether it's in the men's groups or friends or clients or whatever, it's fine to talk about it. But when you talk about it, I feel that rather than holding the breath, breathe into it and breathe it past. It needs to move, because I know if I hold my breath, not only am I feeding it, but I'm making that story who I am. And it's the same. I always say, breathe it, laugh it, cry it, and move it, because it needs to shift. Don't be the story. Live beyond the story. The story is really important, because I find, as I've known my story, and I spent a lot of time getting the logical story together, asking people what happened, what don't I remember, put the pieces together, and I got it. Well, I got a few stories from a few different people from different lenses. It didn't shift much until I got to know my own story, which is what I felt, my emotional story, my experience. That was my story, not anything to do with what other people told me. And I needed to feel through that story and out the other side, because otherwise I was letting that story, or the unknown, it's like the bogeyman, own me. And I was kind of like hovering in quite acceptable, polite trauma above it all, rather than going through it and setting myself free. And as I felt it, I knew that I needed to get up to date with what's true and what's present. And whatever's not present, whatever's the past, I needed to unlearn it to get up to date with here and now. And as I unlearned it, I picked up my tools somehow. I realized the things from childhood that I thought, when I grow up, this needs to change because it's not right. And I didn't have access to those things. I remember having those thoughts, but I didn't know what they were. It's just, fine as a child to think, I have to remember this and I have to change it. It wasn't a logical thing. The child in me, through my emotions, remembered. And as I unlearned things, I picked up my tools, and that really showed me my purpose. So it's a magical process, or it has been for me, of knowing what's here and now, breathing, laughing, crying, moving through it, unlearning it, and setting myself free from the dark shadow to move into the gold shadow of goodness.
Yeah. It's a process. It's all a process, isn't it? What were you going to say, Jonathan?
I was going to say, was there a real turning point that did switch that on for you, Kenny? Or was it like...
I was messy as a child, but they were my dirty little secrets. The only thing, obsessive compulsive disorder and body dysmorphia and eating disorders and trichomania and all of those things. The only thing that people could see, I mean, the family saw that there was strange washing and putting things in order, behavior traits. The only thing that people could see was I used to twitch, I used to tick, I used to grunt, I used to do things like that. And that was the kind of the spillover that I couldn't hide. And I needed to stop that. I needed to be invisible so I could survive. And I guess that's when I started trying anything to learn to calm myself, to learn to start undoing these things. I didn't know what therapy was or anything. We were refugees. We were in the poorest part of Europe at that time. We were in West Wales. And the community were magnificent. It was me that was a problem as far as I was concerned. And I guess my first suicidal thoughts were, as a child there, it's like, well, if there was one less mouth to feed, then maybe they'd get a better chance of survival. So I really made myself the problem, and I needed to hold it together somehow, because my father didn't come out with us, he was left, and luckily he was smuggled out of Uganda. So I was the head of the family, having to take care of things at 7. So I took it on, and I got all these mental health issues. As I started to, I didn't know how, but as I started to not suppress them, but undo them, I just picked up tools. I tried things. I just tried and tried whatever it was. And over the years, I've just uncovered different ways to go from basket case to pretty okay and able to pass things on. So I can't say there was a specific time. I can remember lots of incidents because it happens in layers, and that really pissed me off that it happens in layers. It's like, can't I just buy a fix or something? Yeah. Or I've been here before. What's wrong with me? Why am I here again? I didn't realize that it was like a spiral thing. And pretty much the more I want from life, the more something's going to come up that says, you need to release me, you need to know me, you need to let me go so life can give you more. So it's just been an annoying ongoing process for an ex-control freak.
You want to control it, but, you know. Yeah, that's
Totally.
cool. Yeah.
The interesting thing that you said, I think there's a delay on my end. The interesting thing that you said, Kenny, was about you was almost a container for the disturbances that were being created in the whole of that refugee camp. You was the container for it all. So I'm a psychotherapist, and what we would say that is that you took on the role of the person that held all the hurt for everybody, and you contained it. You was a container because you're an empath. Does that make sense?
I'd agree, and I'd say that's what happened in my family.
Yeah.
Because I became the little boy to be the father. And it's only during this conversation that I've put this together. In refugee camp, it was nasty, and we didn't speak their languages. We only really speak English and a little bit of Swahili. Well, my parents speak Swahili, but then so we didn't know their languages, and people were very different to us in their culture, their religion, the way they behaved, and it was very grabby, and it was horrible. And we were an unprotected Catholic family, so obviously it's our fault, you know. So that was nasty, and there wasn't a lot I could do. There wasn't a lot any of us could do. We were pretty much vulnerable and at the mercy. But it's when we moved to a small town in Wales, then as a family, we were surviving, and I felt and felt and felt without realizing or meaning to. And I guess I was a mummy's boy from a very young age. And so I was used to being responsible for the emotions and the well-being of my mother, my godmother, my grandmother, because that's part of the cost of being a mummy's boy. So I was used to feeling and holding all of that. And it's very true. I not only became an empath, but I thought, this is my character, this is why I'm here. So in a way, I got addicted to that. I made a personality out of that, and I would attract people, especially narcissists, obviously. But anyone that needs saving, I was there. And the only way that I could break that cycle was to tell myself that I was being parasitic on them. And that I need for us all to be equal, rather than me to be indisposable as the one that saves. And again, I really had to work this out. It needed to be in my language. And it was liberating. And I'm so chuffed that I've been through all of this, because it's almost like now it makes sense why I went through that, because here we are. And it's like, yeah, I kind of know this, and I can meet you where you are in your language, and here you go, pass it on. What a relief.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this is what I've learned, is that we don't realize when we're acting out and we're doing things that we're taking on a role that nobody else wants to own.
Or doesn't know how.
Exactly. They have no access to it. They've not got the neural connections in their brain to access that role. So, and you've done it so many times that it's like uncomfortable for you not to take that role. So you take it subconsciously. And I've seen it so many times in relationships that there's an aggravator, and the person who is the strongest personality ends up taking on the role of the aggravator, because the other partner who's passive has got something to say, but they're not saying it. So the other partner becomes the aggravator to almost torment them to bring it out.
I would say that this is another one of the golden opportunities with social isolation and what's going on, is not just knowing myself, but now I can reintroduce myself to the world, and I can create the world that I wish to live in, because we've all had reset pressed. And with this, in a way, I could say, when I was addicted to saving people because that's how I was programmed, then the energy in front of me was almost like a vacuum of, bring out your shit, I know how to deal with it. That wasn't supposed to rhyme, but it's quite
Ghostbusters.
We're going to trademark it.
Ghostbusters.
But in that
But now,
yeah.
not just for myself, but for so many people that I've spoken with, it's like, what do you wish to create? And how can you take responsibility for the vacuum that you're putting out in front of you? How do you wish to be met? What type of a world do you wish to take part in?
Yeah.
How do you wish to be out of control?
Yeah.
Because when I'm in control, then I demand Groundhog Day, and I know how to survive Groundhog Day, and that's control. But this is present and connected with life and out of control and co-creating the next level of, for me, consciousness or connection or community. And I've been holding men's groups for 20 years, and it's only in this last month that I've been told that what's different in the way that I work and the way other people work is, rather than the old addiction of, I'll save you, I'll fix this, this is what to do, this is how to do it, I open it up to everyone, saying, what's your relationship to this? How have you failed with this? How have you succeeded with this? So it's not about me, it's about everyone's experience, and we're all in it together. Yeah. What a relief.
Because when you do it the other way, you're really, and you're trying to do it for everyone, you become the abuser, because you're robbing them of the opportunity to be able to do anything. So in that attitude, it's all about you, and you become the one who keeps the other people broken.
Yeah,
exactly.
And because they don't know how to step up and take that power back, that's why they came to you in the first place.
That's right. I see that in I see that in the work that I do. So I work with chronic pain sufferers, and I show people how to be more powerful than the pain. I don't fix them. That's not my role. My role is to teach you how to fix yourself, because you know what? You're just going to end up back in that washing machine cycle, spinning, in suffering and in pain as soon as we finish our sessions. And that's not what it's about. You need to take responsibility for your health, and let me show you how to do that.
I love it when I hear a therapist who talks about, they had certain persons as a patient, and they've come back again, and I go, yeah, well, you didn't do your job right, did you?
Exactly. Yeah. It's shocking.
Yeah.
You work with somebody, and that they should never really need to come back to you until there's something else that happens in their life, something new, not the old stuff that keeps coming back out again.
That's right.
Yeah. Dawn, you said you're a psychotherapist. I saw a psychotherapist once, and her advice to me was that the only way I could be cured of what I've got, which is bipolar, was if she said that I was cured. So she had to be the one to say I was cured in order for me to be cured. And so, it was like a Groundhog Day. I would just always go back, and I would always see her. She would always be, she would be the one capitalizing off of whatever symptoms I was displaying. We never, ever, anyway, I didn't kill her, but she's dead. So I never got my, you're cured. I could go and see a psychic or something. I don't know. But yeah. So it's funny. I never got that you're cured response from her ever. That's, yeah.
How did you manage your cycles? Do you know your cycles with the bipolar?
No, I don't know my cycles really. Well, I know that on a full moon, I am a bit more elevated, as it turns out. But it's a simple case for me that I've been a bit reckless and gone off medications. And so as a result, when I do go off my medications, I end up getting elevated and going into a hospital and getting treated. And 2 weeks later, I'm back out, and I'm saying, I'll never go off my medications again. This time though, I'm not going off of them ever again. So I'm pretty steadfast on that commitment, because it ended up destroying a really good marriage. So I've got to do it for me to stay on there. Yeah.
Can I just say something, Jonathan? I just want to say that that's really shit that someone did that to you. Because to me, that's a power hold of, I'm the therapist, you're the patient, and you're a lower rank than me. So I'm going to pull rank on you, and I'm going to say that you're only cured when I tell you that you're cured for my significance. So I'm going to take the power away from you. So you have to keep coming back here until I'm ready to give your power back. I'm so sorry. That's absolutely disgusting. And I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart that it's changing.
Yeah.
It's changing. And for anybody who is listening to this, who's had some kind of treatment from some therapist and it's been of power, can I just say that you did nothing wrong? It wasn't your fault. That person just needed significance, and unfortunately you were the person in the room at the time that they needed it. And you did nothing wrong.
That's true.
So they're the ones
that's
who
spot
did
on.
the cure. They're the ones with the problem. Because they wouldn't say that if it hadn't been about them. So this is what I talk about a lot of coaches who have coached people to fix their own problems. And so obviously she was somebody who was working on her own problems and using you as the pathway to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's common. It's a common. Just completely off topic, just to make you laugh. I used to have a cafe in the city of Sydney, and it was in a building where there was top psychologists. And can I just say that they were all fucking bonkers? Like, seriously, I was like, are people paying you? They'd come into my cafe, and one of them in particular, she'd come behind and she'd make her own sandwich and she'd start dancing and she'd put salmon on her head. And I'm going, what are you doing? And she's like, why do you think I got into psychology? I'm not right in the head. I just do this so I can help myself. And I'm like, for me, I was like, I need to study this shit because I need to go out there and help people. Because if this is what is sitting behind you on the couch and supposedly helping you, God forbid what people are coming out like.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share that with you, that there are some crazy people, and a lot of people go into studying psychology for their own benefit. And the thing is, with the psychology studying, you do not actually do any work on yourself.
Okay.
Psychotherapy, I had to do work on myself for 2 years solidly before I could become qualified. So I don't know if it's the place that I studied at, it was completely different, but I do know I was in a room full of psychologists who said not once in their time of studying psychology was they asked to go under therapy at any point. And when one of them actually said to the lecturer, he was a professor, she said, so when do we go to therapy? Do you go to therapy? He said, excuse me, would you dare ask a surgeon when he's going to cut himself open?
Well, he might have something stuck in his leg, so he probably,
You'd be going and asking some other surgeon to do that surgery on you.
That's what his explanation was. Would you go up to a surgeon and ask him has he operated on himself? That's the arrogance that was there. That's the people that were teaching the old school psychology. So no wonder there were psychologists, psychotherapists out there that have been taking the power away from their clients because you know what? Their lecturer, their professor was taking it from them. So how do they know any different?
Well, you just repeat what you go through. It's like a bully. A bully's been bullied. So what they do, they go out and they bully other people. It's a learnt behaviour.
Exactly.
If you have your power taken away from you, you're going to take it away from somebody. You've got to get it back some way.
Exactly.
You feel there's a loss, and you go
I think
for
that's one of the most difficult and insightful things I've been able to say to people recently, because during the lockdown, people have come up with really deep, disturbing issues, cult type things and torture type things, etc., etc. And for me to tell these men that when they were boys and people really stuffed them up with what they did, that it wasn't actually personal. It wasn't actually about you. You, in a way, didn't really matter that much. It kind of breaks the spell of I didn't do something wrong, I wasn't bad, I didn't deserve it, etc., etc. On the other hand, it's almost like it seems so rude to say, look, it could have been a rabbit, it could have been anyone or anything.
Yeah.
It's a really strange place to go. But what you just said there, Alan, about it's all they have to pass on, or it's all they know, or it's all they experience. Sometimes people need to be clear that this is the way that this person expresses relationship. It's the only way they know how to connect. And it could be save me, it could be hit me, it could be anything. And it might not make any logical sense at all. But as you were saying earlier on, Dawn, as an empath, especially as a young empath, I believed that people wanted to be healthy if that's what they said. I didn't realize that this is just how they express relationship with, let's play kiss chase and I'll never be better and you'll keep chasing me and that's the connection I know. And then we can vamp each other. It was absolutely shocking. It's very strange.
See, I had one of my sons ask me one day, he said, when you communicate with people, he said, what's the best way to connect with them and find out? And I said, well, you ask questions. He said, well, what happens when you've asked all your questions? I said, I guarantee that more questions will come up. And if they haven't, look for them, because the more questions you can ask, the more you can understand. I'm not quite sure exactly what the figures, because I've heard it from a number of different locations, and they're talking about coaches. When you start telling your problems, it's somewhere between 70 and as few as 17 seconds before they start giving advice. If that is the case, then obviously they're not dealing with you. They're the person who's dealing with their own problems. And that's why when I talk to people, they tell you it takes ages and that. I've already worked a lot of stuff out, but I'm not going to make a suggestion or anything else or definitely no advice, and not unless it's been asked for as well. I will ask question after question after question so I fully understand it. And while I'm asking those questions, half the time the person works the problem out themselves. They come up with their own solution. And they go, that was a great conversation. I've said, bugger all, I've had to ask a few questions.
Yeah.
And they've worked it out. So they've taken ownership of it. But the number of coaches who come to me, they'll tell me that they're, energy specialists and all the rest of the intuitives. And I've dealt with one woman. I actually gave her money back and sent her away. She was just emotional. And all of the comments that were coming was emotional stuff. And I went, this woman's not an empath, but she's telling everybody that, and she's putting her stuff onto them. And she wasn't a young chicken either. So she had a problem for a very long time. So it's a case of ask questions, find out more, value the other person, respect them.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we need to make sure that the any therapist that we have is doing that. If they're not respecting you, then you know it's about their stuff. Time to walk.
I'd say there's another strange issue here. And that is that a lot of people want to give their power to someone. So you be responsible, you take care, you save me, be my healer, my teacher, my guru, my therapist, my savior, my daddy, my superhero, whatever it is. And I'll give you lots of money and I'll tell you you're great and stick you on a pedestal. Every now and again, I might throw stones to see if you fall off the pedestal, but let's have that relationship. And a lot of people make very traditionally good businesses out of this type of a relationship, where the way I look at them is, for me, they're tourists. They're not willing to do the work. And I don't take on tourists. I don't want to be another one that's played kiss chase with them while they keep running and they won't be met and they don't want to turn it around. And then I kind of thought, what is this about? Because it's like, there are so many people that are up to this, and there are so many people that will meet this and love the money and the status and everything else. And the only way I could really make peace with this, and this is purely my judgment from my perspective, but I kind of came up with, and it's not like I coined the phrase, false students demand false masters. Am I willing to be either? Or can I step away? And I really had to step away because it was more important for me to feel like I'm in integrity and alignment with myself and trusting that I would be taken care of while I do my work, than holding on and controlling and being parasitic on people. And I remember I go and see a therapist, they call it supervision, every other week. And this guy also works with men, and he also holds men's group, and he's got all the ologies and everything. And I remember saying to him, by the way, I had this really uncomfortable pang the other day. when I was flipping through Facebook, and there were all these nonsense things up there from coaches and leaders and all of this nonsense, and it just felt wrong. It was kind of demanding these give me your power and follow me and I'll tell you what you want to hear type stuff, and I felt it was dirty. But what I didn't like was that I had a kind of pang of jealousy, or what's wrong with me, or it's like I took it personally. And he said to me, well, you need to go to a therapist convention, because everyone is so nice and polite and gracious to each other, but they hate each other so much. But it's really weird. I was so pleased that I could take it, rather than there's something wrong with me. I should be marketing, or I should be saying the right thing, or I shouldn't be jealous. But what a relief to take this and break the spell, rather than to have a dirty little secret and all more crap going on in my head.
Yeah. But to recognize something's going on and then ask the questions, what is this? You're not looking at blaming or anything else. You're actually looking for a solution. And that's the difference. There's so many people who are looking at blaming. It's like, as you said, the person who takes the power and the person who's willing to give it away. There's got to be a reason for giving it away. There's got to be a secondary gain. There's got to be something that they get out of it that makes them feel better about themselves, to be the victim who's always looking up to the guru, who says, take my life, tell me what to do. There's got to be a reason behind it. And that's, any that I'm doing, I think, well, hang on, what is the secondary gain here? What's another reason for me doing this? Why do I do the things that I might be doing? I go looking for that, because there's got to be another reason for it. It's not just, there's no reason for it. There is always a reason.
Self-worth.
And you go back to that and you understand, well, why? And as you say, we seem to find the, if we're a false patient, we're going to find a false doctor. Same thing with students and teachers. We find it in our relationships. We find somebody who's used to being abused. They will find somebody, even in a room of 100 people, if there's one or two abusers in there, they'll gravitate to that person. Because we seem to, energy-wise, we connect to them. So instead of saying, I keep getting an abuser, ask yourself, well, why are you attracting that? What is it that you're not dealing with yourself that puts you in that position? Because they wouldn't recognize, they wouldn't come to you if they didn't recognize something in you. And it's all done at an unconscious level, at an energy level. So there's a lot of things there, but probably looking at running out of time here. As I say, every time we get into these conversations, and I just enjoy them so much, and I look at the clock. I'm glad I got a clock on there. Otherwise, we'd be still here tomorrow morning and talking. It's been so much fun. But that's the whole thing, is we've all had feelings and we're all different. What I think would be really great is if we can start looking at some of the people talking about the different types of feelings and get a better understanding of how we're all different, but what was, what were things were happening behind, because we are the sum of all of our experiences. And and everyone's got different experiences. So every one of us are going to have different reasons for behaving even in similar ways, but most of us are going to behave in different ways. So it's, it opens up, because this has probably been a little bit of therapy. I don't know about you guys, but a bit of therapy for me having this conversation where we're talking about what we felt, and just wondering whether people who are listening to this, whether they've been thinking a little bit deeper. Anything they would like to say before we leave, though, each of you?
Not for me, but just thanks. Thanks for the. It's great listening to you both, all three of you actually. With everything that you've been through, Kenny and Dawn, what you share yourself through your work as well. Some really valuable insights, and Alan as well. It's been really great to hold the space here with you guys. Thank you.
Nice.
I was just going to say that I'm not nice, and there are all of these people out there, the abusers, people could say Trump, whoever, whatever, and all those nasties that I judge, including the thieves and the narcissists and all of that. I know I've got that in me. And what I really learned is, if I'm attracting other people in my life to play it for me, then I need to own that part in me, not necessarily express it, that needs to be a part of me. And then I'll turn the volume down on it because I'm not going to disown it and it's not going to own me. But I need to know these parts and manage them. So don't buy the act. I'm not nice.
I think the thing to remember is it's not that there's a right or wrong, or there's a good or a bad. There just is. But it's how we then deal with that as to whether it has an impact on other people, where it comes across as good or bad. So as you say, we've all got that inside of us, but does it control us, or do we become aware of it? As you say, take ownership of it, recognise it, and then turn the volume down on it. So some great stuff in there. Well, Dawn, Kenny and Jonathan, thank you very much for having been here, and looking forward to getting you guys back again. So as I say, I just keep running these the panel discussions because I enjoy them so much. I don't really care about anybody else out there, to be honest. It's all about me. I just get so much out of this, and I'm putting a lot of work into it, but it's not work for me because I enjoy it so much. So thank you for being here, and to everybody else who's out there as well. Thank you for being part of it, because I wouldn't be having as much fun if it wasn't for all of you. And the Campfire Project wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for all of you. So thanks again.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. Great to hang out.
We'll see you all later on, and we'll see everybody else out there at the next time we have a chat or a panel discussion. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.